Hi guys and good evening. Welcome to special meeting number 325 of the Wachusett Regional School District School Committee. We are coming to you tonight via Google Meets per Governor Baker's orders via the changes in OML during the pandemic. So tonight we are coming to you with a special format. It's a similar format that we used earlier in the summer in order to garner feedback from our constituents, to hear respectfully from the concerns of parents, from teachers, from students themselves, and then to have the administration have an opportunity to answer these concerns the best they can. Us as a school committee have the opportunity to once again meet, and I know sometimes that word opportunity to meet is becoming redundant, as I feel like you guys are now part of my family. I see you more often than I see my mother. We have an opportunity to meet in 6 days. So we've had ample opportunity to take the time to answer and ask our own questions, to give our own concerns. And tonight is an opportunity to hear from the public and to really take into consideration what they need answered. With that in mind, our agenda tonight, I will give a few brief opening remarks. I think then it would be best to move into public hearing. So without, unless you guys have objection, I want to move item number 4 to item number 3 so that we hear from the public first, and then we next hear from the discussion of the transition plans from remote to hybrid via the administration, and then adjourn. To also speak to the public tonight, I was so honored to hear from so many of you over the last 5 days. What I have done is to take your questions and put them into a Google document. I then took this Google document and submitted it to the administration early this morning. If your questions came in anytime today, I took the time to ask you if you needed your questions to be read aloud, or if it's okay that they were included in the document. If you had told me that it's okay for them to be included just in the document, I won't be reading them aloud tonight. If you did not answer me, or if you gave me permission to read them out loud, I will be reading them out loud tonight. So with that being said, some opening remarks. I first wanted to offer words of thanks and deep and honest gratitude. As a parent of 2 young children in the district myself, I have seen the tireless work that the teachers are putting in the last week in order to make this work for students. I first wanted to thank the teachers tonight for everything they've done in extraordinary circumstances to make learning as fun and engaging as humanly possible, even when it's not necessarily fun nor engaging. I was able to do some sit-ups and planks and some jumping jacks in my 7-year-old's bedroom with him as his gym teacher tried to conduct a gym class with 12 little 7-year-olds early this week. I was allowed to view my 8-year-old as he was engaging in how to do a real Google slide presentation. And as a high school administrator myself, I hoped that his 4th grade teacher can teach my 12th graders how to do a better presentation. I also want to thank the kids. Man, all of you. I'm looking at Catherine and Kenichi tonight. You guys are doing extraordinary things. Your eyes are tired, your neck is tired, your hands are tired, and you're still traveling on. You are trying to engage the best you can in your education, and you care deeply about attending school. Next, I wanted to thank the parents. Man, you guys are the rock stars of this whole situation. Many of you have given up jobs, you've given up shifts, you've changed shifts, you've done learning pods. You have done extraordinary things to ensure your children have an education. You've bought in new devices, you've upgraded your internet, you've asked neighbors for help, you've asked the district for help. There has to be countless grandmothers, aunts, uncles, friends, cousins, young brothers and sisters that are coming into the house to assist each and every one of you. So I want you to know deeply from the bottom of my heart that you are appreciated. Finally, tonight, I wanted to thank my school committee members, many of whom I am seeing on screen tonight. You guys are rock stars as well, and you don't get to be thanked. We have met almost bi-weekly since the pandemic began. many of you more than that on subcommittees, and your work is appreciated, it is heard, it is felt, and I cannot thank you more. With that being said, tonight, we spoke in management last night about some norms that we'd like to see moving forward that are particularly important to me. I do a lot of these meetings as an administrator and with my staff. And I also often tell my staff that you cannot expect more out of your students than you expect out of yourselves. Our teachers expect our students to be on camera, to be engaged, to be fully within the meetings of their schooling. So I'm asking you school committee members tonight to do the same. When you're on these meetings, to have your camera on. We have good hair nights and bad hair nights. We have interruptions and barking dogs and everything in between, and it's okay. It's okay that we don't look great and that our picture is grainy, but I want the public to know that we are here and we are invested in what they have to say. I understand if your connection is poor and you have to turn it off just to stay online, that happens. But if you have the capability to have your microphone on and to have particularly your camera on, I think it is important for the public to know that we are listening deeply to their concerns. So from this point forward, just as we were meeting in a public forum where we would be recorded in the Wachusett Library, I want us to try to do better by the public, to expect not any more out of them than we would expect out of ourselves, and to keep our cameras on and to keep ourselves engaged. All right, that was a little more long-winded than I thought because we've got a lot to do tonight. With that being said, I'm going to take a quick breath. I have upwards of 30 to 40 comments to read tonight. I want to do so with fidelity. So if you would bear with me and to bring your attention, I am now going to begin the reading of public comment. We first hear tonight from Jana Brennan, who states, "Dear Dr. McCall, I have a few questions that I'm hoping you can answer to help our family better decide hybrid versus remote and whether to use the bus. If we choose remote and want to switch, is that possible? If so, what is the waiting period? Same for the reverse. For busing, will elementary and middle schools return to staggered schedules? I would prefer to drive, but I can't do 2 schools at the exact same time. Lunch, there's not a lot of details in the opening plan. Will kids be facing one direction? Will talking be allowed? How will kids in one room at a time while eating and masks are off? I have some health issues, so learning the full risk of sending kids back to school is important to our family. I hope to not have to keep my kids remote solely due to lunch. Any further details you can provide would be helpful. I understand how difficult this is and appreciate the efforts by you, the administration, and staff. Thank you very much for your time and help." From Jana Brennan. Next, we hear from Jennifer Pasoli at 99 Pleasant Street in Holden, Massachusetts. "Hello, can you provide details on the school day times?" This comes from a middle school parent. "Will remote be similar to current remote schedules? Will the 2 days in school during hybrid end at 11:55 or later in the afternoon? Students intending hybrid, on their remote days, does the synchronous learning end at 11:55? Next tonight, we hear from Melissa Feller from Princeton, Massachusetts. "How are the teacher-student assignments being handled? Will these assignments be changed when the in-person learning model begins? In the hybrid path, are the 3 remote days 100% asynchronous? If a family selects the hybrid path and then decides they need to switch to remote only, how will this be handled? In the remote only path, will schedules remain the same as it is now with a mix of synchronous and asynchronous learning? Is the percentage of live instruction the same for both hybrid and remote only paths?" Next, we hear from Angela Daigle. "Will elementary school hybrid students remain with their current teacher? Will snow days during hybrid learning need to be made up, or will students report to school remotely? Will school start times during hybrid learning be different? What will K-4 hybrid students really be doing on remote days? For hybrid learning, how are sick days handled? If a student's unable to go to school on an in-person day, but well enough to learn at home, will that student be considered absent, or can they have the option of participating remotely?" Next, we hear from Kim Malalu. I'm wondering why after 2.5 days of online learning, we are being asked to complete a survey about hybrid learning and why it needs to be completed after only 7.5 days. This isn't enough time to make a decision based on how online learning is really going. I think we need a few weeks in order for a good decision to be made. I realize that many parents have made a decision already based on the virus, the online learning in spring, and their schedules. For me, the decision lies in how my son is doing now. Is he healthy? Is he organized? Is he keeping up with anything? Does he need more? I need more time in order to make this decision. I also don't know if he will take the bus or not if he goes back to school. Our circumstances could change, and whatever we decide to do may change. Then what? I hope I'll have a better idea of how this is going for my son, and that I can complete this survey with confidence. With this being said, I appreciate everything you are doing to make this successful. I will support whatever decision you make. I know that you, like most of us, are doing the best they can in this hard situation. From Crystal Roy, 2 questions. 1, my middle school children are required to be online from 8:45 to 3 with a short break for lunch. This is a very long day. With technology challenges and lack of understanding what can happen in class, we ask that no additional work be assigned outside of class during the remote period. They're asked to be managed 10 Google Classrooms, email, and teacher websites. As parents, we need help to understand what they're doing, how to make a slide, a video, use Google Drive. Where's our training? For the mental health of all involved, I would like you to consider eliminating extra work during this period. 2, there are many school systems across New England that are going back full-time. What needs to happen for our students to go back to full-time as often as possible? Again, Crystal added one more question in a follow-up email. What is required for smooth connectivity for technology? What is the recommended internet speed? What is the minimum operating system of each device? Recommended Wi-Fi for each house. From Jamie Goodall. I have a few questions regarding the options that we have to make. They are as follows. In the case that a class is taught by only one teacher, for example, AP Art, will students be unable to take that class depending on their decision? Will other teachers be readily available to teach a course that they've not taught before? If a student is remote and their clubs decide to meet in person, is the student now unable to attend extracurriculars? If a student reports that they don't need a bus, but some event occurs, for example, their car won't start, is that student unable to use the bus? Is there a policy or plan in place for sick days? Will a student be allowed back in school after a certain number of days if they have symptoms? Will they need a test? Can seniors be reassured that they will have help from guidance during the college application process? Will the counselors have a way to track all students regardless of their decision, hybrid or remote? How will guidance presentations be made? Will remote students be less involved in these presentations due to their decision? Will hybrid students have an overall advantage over remote students? From Marlene Thobo. It looks like the kids will not be able to keep their same teacher if they remain fully remote. Will they be keeping their teacher when they transition to hybrid? Or hybrid of they elect to go to school, or if they elect to go to school? From Leah and Kyle Wickman, Dawson Elementary parents. First off, let me start off by saying thank you to all the WRSD staff for working so hard to ensure the safety of our students and school and staff getting our kids ready. I feel the first few days of remote learning went well. I have a 3rd and 5th grader at Dawson. We were provided detailed schedules and clear expectations ahead of the first day. This allowed both kids to transition into school very easily. I particularly like that they were not left to self-directed learning for too long of a period, while also being afforded sufficient screen breaks. I am emailing this evening as I have some questions before I can make a decision. I understand there'll be a special school committee meeting Wednesday evening. I am asking for a more detailed daily and weekly schedule for each learning model. It sounds like teachers and classmates will change if students choose remote for the year. Will this change if choosing hybrid? What will be the daily start and end time for in-person learning for our elementary schools? Will there be an opportunity to transition back to taking the bus if you say your child's not taking the bus? Finally, I feel like the September 25th deadline for families is aggressive. It would serve the district well if you extended it until Friday, October 2nd. Thank you for your time and dedication to WRSD students and families. Next tonight, we hear from Corey Burnham Howard and Mike Howard of 11 Osgood Road in Princeton, Massachusetts. Dear Dr. McCall, Deputy Superintendent Burlow, Chair Weeks, and school committee members, we are writing with concern about the sudden deadline of requested families to select the learning path of their students and to make transportation commitments for the remainder of the school year. We are writing first to say we want to start by thanking all of the many individuals who have committed extraordinary amounts of time and efforts to get us to where we are today. We are in unprecedented times that have required unprecedented actions and coordination to ensure continued success for our children. Our family's remote start to the year has been very successful and appreciated. Unfortunately, just 2 days into our new normal, as our anxieties about the unknown and unexpected were about to ease, when we were just settling into our new routine, we received an email from Dr. McCall requesting within the week our decision on choice of learning model and our commitment to transportation for the year. We inferred the need for timely decisions so that buildings, transportation, and schedules for the different learning paths can be prepared for the school year. However, the lack of information and detail provided with regard to the remote-only and hybrid paths was disconcerting. The general descriptions and summary provided in the WRSD description of remote and hybrid learning paths is lacking details needed for parents and guardians to make informed decisions. After reading the descriptions provided, we were left with more questions than answers, which is unacceptable given the consequential decisions we're being asked to quickly make. Normally, we've been following school committee meetings and Dr. McCall's presentations, and despite that background, we are left confusing and wanting. We can only assure that those who have not been following the meetings might be more perplexed. We respectfully request that parents and guardians be given a reasonable extension to choose the two paths for the remainder of the year. If a reasonable extension cannot be granted, we would appreciate a clarification as to why the proposed model daily weekly schedules for each learning path is not clarified. We want to know specific school building and remote daily start and end times. Information on whether each learning path students will retain or lose their current teachers. Information on whether a remote-only high school path they will be able to continue their current classes at varied academic levels. Information on school bus protocols, number of students per bus and monitoring, if any, by adults on buses. Information on how class transition and hallway passing will be safely handled. Information on the health metrics under which the WRSD will return to remote-only learning. Building and classroom protocols for COVID-19 positive cases. Information on the ability of families who choose hybrid path to change the decision and move to remote path based on a desire of change and health metrics or change in provision of information and details. The ability of families to make an informed decision on the future learning of their students and the ability of families to commit to transportation choices demands this information among other and more details. Thank you for your attention to this matter, your consideration of future actions and information sharing and communication, and your continued efforts. Best regards. We next hear from Mary Pickering. Good morning. I know you must be inundated with questions after the ill-thought-of vague email from the superintendent on Friday. I have all the same questions as the people on the social media platforms, but two additional questions that I have respectfully asked to be addressed are: under the hybrid plan, how are push-in services going to be provided for students in an IEP who have 5 days a week on their grid? Asynchronous learning does not satisfy these requirements. 2, should a vaccine become available or the virus infection levels plummet by spring, is it possible for in-person learning? Will all the students revert back to the teachers they currently have for the first quarter, even if we choose full remote and have a subsequent change in teacher/professionals for our AEP services after the first quarter? Thank you, Mary Pickering. Next, we're going to hear from Kate Potenza, who says, I'm starting to have a lot of questions and I have a few comments. After reading the models that will be our 2 options moving forward with a decision needed by Friday, I'm not feeling too great about either option. Thoughts of what we're doing now. 9 to 3 Chrome School is too much screen time. I know it's only been a few days and I'm sure the work will increase. I feel like we could be using the kids' time better with a more challenging work in a condensed time. My kids have enjoyed school so far and they appreciate being part of something. They are creating connection to you, their teachers, that have been assigned to them. I worry that with a potential shuffling of teachers and kids, they might lose these connections. This will add to the disjointed feeling that the school year is going to leave kids with. Thoughts on full remote. If we're going to choose this option, it would need to be condensed elementary school, say 9 to 12 with more learning in a shorter time. I can't imagine that a hybrid full day is going to provide more than 3 hours of actual instruction either. Switching teachers after creating connection with the teacher is not ideal. I wish we had the opportunity to start this option at the beginning of the year, where the teacher and the kids would have been together for the full year. Thoughts on hybrid. It sounds like our 2 days off will be synchronous with 2 days in-person instruction in a lab-like setting, not conducive to learning. I can't see how this is the ideal learning environment. I understand the push from the DESE in Governor Baker's office, but that doesn't mean we sacrifice all the important stuff to get bodies in the building. Also, what happens if they shut it all down and go back to remote? We need more communication from the district, from our leadership at Houghton, and from everybody working on this issue. I'd like to see a breakdown of what factors and metrics are driving decisions. I would like to see a breakdown of what they are offering, the option, and what would the benefit to children would be. Not to benefit the parents or to benefit reporting to DESE, but benefit to the children and learning potential. That should be leading these conversations. I don't see any language in the description of our options that resembled that. We are considering pulling the kids and either homeschooling them or enrolling them in Truro public schools where we spend the summer and have residency. Truro's going back full-time, will be conducting classes outside in their tents. I have feelers out for this is going and it will remain an option for us. Lastly, I'm so impressed with the dance that teachers are trying to do, trying to follow the lead of this massive district. I am so thankful for the teachers and everything they've done, and know that they will continue to strive to make the kids have the best year possible. Thank you for Kate Pazena. I'm sorry when I butcher your names. Do my very best. All right. Next tonight, we hear from Michelle Hendricks from 18 Forbes Road in Rutland. To the school committee. First of all, thank you for the incredible amount of time and energy you've been putting into this year. It is evident that you're committed to making this year as successful as possible for our children. With that, I really appreciate you taking the time to hold a special meeting related to selecting remote versus hybrid for the remainder of the year. I do have a couple of questions as I don't feel sufficient information was made to have an informed decision about what's best for our family. For hybrid, what happens during those 2 remote days when the opposite cohort is in person? I like to see this be much more detailed than it currently is. It sounds as though those days would be entirely independent with no synchronous learning at all. This is uncomfortable, similar to what happened in the spring, and gives less instruction time than what kids are getting full remote. Currently, they have 4.5 days. Hybrid is learning it to 2.5. B, if these days are independent, how does that realistically work for the younger grades, especially those who can't read themselves? C, what will these assignments be like, and how much work should be anticipated? Would assignments for these days be graded? What about the younger grades and kids that need adult supervision? 2, once we switch to a hybrid model, what is the purpose for PD on Wednesdays? A, if the teachers will only be teaching one day remote and the rest in person as it's always been, it would be helpful to understand what this time will be used for. 3, how does special education work with a hybrid model? A, my child has an IEP for 5 days of 45 minutes pull-out for SPED instruction and 5 days of para support. Presumably, special ed pull-out would continue remotely on these days, hopefully. What about para support? Will we have access to a para to help complete assignments remotely? B, it's important to note I did not get my child's remote plan until the day after school started and only after I reached out to request it. I'm trying to be patient, but the SPED planning thus far has been lacking communication with mixed messages, incorrect information, and a lack of communication with parents in general. So I'm struggling to be optimistic about further changes. 4, in the hybrid plan, how will specials work? If children only receive 2.5 days per week, will they have specials in person? A, does this mean less time for specials in general, or will they attend specials virtually? B, if the 2 home days are entirely independent, I much prefer to see specials remain remote on these days to maximize in-person learning. 5, in the hybrid plan, why can't the home cohort watch the in-person cohort virtually as it's always been? A, I've asked around this in practice and working in other districts. It's on us to be creative. B, if the above is not feasible, can we consider the teacher working with an in-person cohort in the morning, then switching back to working with the remote cohort in the afternoon, so all children get FaceTime every day? C, how can we better utilize paras to make this work? 6, if we choose to remain remote, how will the new teacher be selected? A, will the grades be mixed? And if so, please elaborate. B, since different classrooms move at different paces, how will the remote teacher ensure continuity with the material that they've been learning so far? C, teachers spent a good deal of time working this week about getting to know their students. Will this time be replicated if they switch to a new teacher in a new role? Answers to the above are essential for parents to select the best path to go forward. And given the lack of information and tight timing on our table, our family has started to make inquiries about alternative options for education. I would prefer not to pull my children from the district, especially that the school year has already begun, but I'm worried about it. Assuming the decision is made up prior to October 1, I understand this might increase the negative budget implications we already face, but I'm concerned we might be left with no choice. In addition to more information, I think we need more time. We only have 1.5 weeks to understand how remote will work before making a commitment. Each kid is different, it's going to take some time. As I said before, it is on us as a district to be creative and to make the best of a bad situation. The plan that's been laid out leaves a lot of questions and lack of creativity and flexibility. Teachers have been incredibly flexible thus far, and parents have been incredibly flexible thus far. It is time for the administration to step up and be flexible too. Respectfully, Michelle Hendricks. Next, we're going to hear from Paxton Center School family, the Sid Horns. Hello. We just have comments to be shared with the school committee. We have a first grader and second grader in our house. One parent has already had to reduce the hours to stay at home and facilitate remote learning, which has hurt us financially. Despite our best efforts, our first grader is struggling with reading because she missed most of kindergarten last year. Both our children are in tears daily, frustrated with technology when it fails to work out, and overwhelmed by clicking between websites, missing instructions when videos are cut off, and feeling like they don't get what's happening. We've done our best to protect our children's mental health since March. The last 4 days of remote learning has caused such steep declines that we hesitate to even have them log in. We appreciate and understand the Herculean efforts made by teachers and administrators, that this is not simply how young children learn. In just a short time, our young children who used to love school and learning have grown to despise it. One parent in our family is immune compromised, and still, the downward spiral that we've seen our children go through is more concerning than the potential of this parent becoming sick with COVID-19. We understand that not everyone can return to school, but we beg that those who can and are willing to be allowed to do so as soon as possible. Many other cities and towns where there are far more cases, Framingham and Ashland, have already returned to hybrid without incident. Thank you for your time. Next comes from Megan. I'm going to butcher this one. I'm sorry, Megan. Hershek. Dear Dr. McCall, Mrs. Wallace, and school committee, I am writing because I'm very concerned about the status of school. I'm a nurse and have been working through the pandemic. My husband is a middle school principal and been working many long hours, as I'm sure you have. I don't have a problem with children starting remote, but I don't understand why the kids aren't returning to school until November. I'm sure that older kids can navigate the online schooling, but the younger kids are struggling. I have a 4th grader and a 2nd grader. They love school up to this year. They are disengaged and it's breaking my heart. If I wasn't at home helping, I don't think they would be doing anything. I know that the teachers are doing the best they can. These kids belong in school and we're going to be repercussions if that doesn't happen soon. I know everyone is scared. The sooner kids get back, the sooner everyone will feel more comfortable. I am hoping to reevaluate the back to school plan and reconsider getting kids back sooner. I'm a nurse and want to help out to do whatever. If other school districts and private schools can make it happen, I know we can. Also, in regards with the survey about transportation, I think that there should have been something asking parents if they'd be willing to drive their kids instead of taking the bus. I know you're concerned about the budget and don't want it to be a deal breaker. Next, we hear from Leslie Mason on Sandy Ridge Road in Sterling. I am very concerned regarding the hybrid details. When looking at this model, it appears that the details that children will only receive synchronous instruction teaching on the 2 days they're in school. According to the details of the plan, the asynchronous days will be meant for independent work. This means a child will only be taught math once a week in the proposed model. How's that possible? How are students supposed to learn new material in an asynchronous time during those other days? Why is this acceptable? And why is it acceptable that children to be swapped into different classes? This seems far too disruptive. How will they be properly prepared for MCAS or even meeting the standards? We need a better plan, one that puts our children's education and best interests at the forefront of the discussion. This seems like, again, another tactic of the administration to make returning to school next to impossible. It seems like the administration has worked against the better interests of our children. And here we are again, fighting for our children's education. I respectfully ask the school committee to really push back on this hybrid model. I ask the school committee to request more synchronous instruction. From Leslie Mason on Sandy Ridge Road in Sterling. Excuse me, guys. Next from Tiffany Sidhorn. 2 questions. Is it possible for younger kids to have more worksheet-based work? 2, understand that we're trying to make remote seem like school, but can we focus more on the teacher being the only one on video? My children are distracted by seeing themselves, but are also struggling with the fact that other children are together in pods or at childcare facilities. I understand it's necessary for many families, but it's making an already difficult situation worse for our children who are being left out of those groups. Next, we hear from Marcy Driscoll. I wanted to write and share thoughts as a parent of 1st grader at Dawson. I'm so very impressed with the level of communication and the amount of thought, creativity, and planning that has gone into the remote program offered to Dawson. Mrs. Wallace and Mrs. Bishkoff have kept parents informed through summer and fall, offered opportunities for questions and answers, and kept families updated. The academic program offered by my son's 1st grade teacher and team is well planned, provides for opportunities for movement breaks, student participation, and opportunities to work at different times as needed. It's a big change, but my son's been engaged and excited, and is eager to see his teachers every day. I also want to thank members of the school committee for supporting the process of researching the HVAC and air quality. This is a big concern of mine as a parent. Proper air circulation and ventilation is essential. I am, as a parent, though, greatly concerned with the communication that's come from the district office itself. Like many parents, I was caught by surprise by the email sent on Friday indicating the need to choose a desired program, for the rest of the school year after less than 2 weeks of remote learning. I was also disappointed to learn that the building administration and teachers were unaware this email was being sent, and therefore they were not prepared to answer my questions, which I tried to ask on Friday. I'm fortunate to be home on unpaid leave right now from my district position, and we have the flexibility to support our son, but it's very hard to think about making this type of decision so quickly. I also found that it's unfair to my colleagues for this email to go out without previous communication to teachers and administration. Thank you for setting up the meeting on Wednesday. I'm hoping more information comes from there. Sincerely, Marcy Driscoll. Next, from Caroline Willman. My daughter is a junior and would drive herself if she were guaranteed a parking pass. How would you like us to answer the question on the survey? If she can't obtain a parking permit, then all three would take the bus. I want to give the most accurate information possible, but I'm not sure how to answer. Next, from Nancy Turlato. I have many questions regarding the survey. If one chooses remote, who is teaching them? Please be more specific than WRSD educators. Is it their teacher, their current teacher? I'm trying to understand how this will work. Are you putting kids from different schools in the same remote classroom together? 2, if we choose hybrid, do they stay with their current teacher? Again, trying to figure out who's teaching the kids. 3, how will the cohorts be made? Alphabetically? This would be very helpful making a decision. 4, for the hybrid students, please explain in detail how the other 3 days will go. Are there live classes? 5, we need to make this decision for the rest of the school year. Is there any reassessment of the situation? What if things look really good, and what if there's a vaccine? Thanks for all you do. Nancy Turlato of Sterling, Mass. Next, from Julie Hurley. 1, explain to the Wachusett community why we still have not been prepared to open schools. 2, can anyone answer how these assessments will be made? 3, where is the prioritization and urgency to have special ed and elementary grades going back? 4, how are my children supposed to build virtual friendships? 5, how are my children's teachers supposed to build relationships with my child, evaluate their needs? 6, is the district prepared to manage the mental health of all family members and the children, parents and grandparents are trying to manage this awful environment for learning? 7, why have other districts made it happen on some level of hybrid, and Wachusett has not? Extremely disappointed in district and members involved to take action in making my children's education possible. Next, we hear from Will Briggs. Once again, we want to thank you and the rest of you for your team for your efforts put in these last months. I don't envy any of your positions. However, we need to give some honest feedback here. We were going to wait till Friday once a full week had passed before we commented if we did at all, but I can't wait. I'm currently shopping for a heavy bag and boxing gloves to put in our basement where our kids can do their remote learning, so my son does not smash his fist through a wall. Normally, he's the most calm and easygoing child. This has brought him to his knees. He has multiple breakdowns during a day and is forced to do extra work on the computer after several hours already because the system crashed so many times he didn't get to finish. He's in 6th grade. We purchased a brand new Chromebook for this, and we also have a new MacBook, so we're up to date technology-wise. There are so many flaws with this way of learning for young kids, but first off, several hours of screen time is not healthy. My daughter in 3rd, who normally loves everything about school, is miserable as well. My son has anxiety every night knowing he has to repeat the process daily. It's not healthy in any way. I can't imagine how this is from the teacher's end as well. I feel for them. This needs to be eliminated or drastically changed, as there's no way this is sustainable. After a few days, my wife is considering withdrawing them in homeschooling, which has its own negative ramifications for our viewpoint, which may also be the lesser of 2 evils. This is coming from a family in which my wife has a master's degree in guidance, a full education background, and is home with them. I can't imagine what other children are going through. I plead with you for the sake of the generation of children, do whatever you can to eliminate this program and get the kids back in school. I understand you're at the mercy of state guidelines and it's much easier said than done, but if you have kids' best interests at heart, which we know you do, they need to be in the classroom. Is this the point where the supposed cure is worse than the disease in our humble opinions? I should say cure because we don't believe keeping them out of school will be any more dangerous than being under school. Sorry to be and sound so negative, but when we need positivity more than ever, we felt that we had to give our honest feedback. Thanks once again. If there's anything we can do on our ends to help, please let us know. We'd love to help in any way we can. From Will Briggs. Next from Teresa Riley. Hi all. First, I want to say what a wonderful job teachers and administrators are doing at PCS. We have a first grader. My question is about the longevity of the day. I feel like if you can homeschool for no more than 2 hours a day, why can't you also do that with virtual learning? It's a very long day for a young child to be on the computer, and our first grader has a hard time with it. Is there any way we can shorten the day? From Teresa Riley. Next, from Jennifer Scalise Mullet. The way hybrid is going to look in our district is paramount importance to us, as is the continuity of the educators that our kids are just beginning to know. What I'm most interested is to understand if we choose hybrid, what our remote days will look like. We receive good quality live teaching with remote, but if we get less with hybrid, parents should know. Parents should also know if their kids' teachers will change. Please be transparent. Please consider that every school district is not the same as every school in terms of capacity. We need to be nimble, agile, and responsive. We are not all Holden. From Deb Baccarin. As a parent of a child, I've heard numerous things in the district about allowing mask breaks. I ask, why aren't the kids supposed to wear them all day? I understand they can take them off for lunch. I just don't think it's a good idea to have breaks in school. Next, from Sarah Lefebvre at 27 Lancelot Drive in Paxton, Mass. I'm a parent who lives in Paxton and a teacher that works at the high school. I'm writing with you to convey my thoughts. My daughter just started kindergarten at PCS and loves her teachers. The curriculum is age appropriate and takes into account limitations. The communication and feedback exceeds my expectations. However, before I'm ready to commit sending my 5-year-old to school in person, I want to know what's been done to the fiscal plan to ensure safety. I'm concerned about the lack of a mask mandate in kindergarten. I think all K-5 students should be wearing them. My students in my classes have been asking me this week about the survey. They want to know, what will the education experience be like if they're remote? Will the remote experience be sitting at home watching a screen? They want to know if they get to keep their teacher, if they're hybrid. They have work schedules and want to know their school schedule is going to change. Thank you for your time tonight. From Sarah Lefebvre. Next tonight from Hank Leftwich. I'm a parent of 2 elementary age school students, kindergarten and second grade at TPS. My wife and I have partnered with other families to have a pod to help our children maximize their educational opportunities. This arrangement has been very beneficial for our children. As we consider what option to choose for the next phase, we have questions. If we choose the option of hybrid learning, we'll be able to have our children, 3 kindergarten students and 4 second graders assigned to the same cohort. Our hope is yes. If we select the fully remote option, we'll be able to have our children both in kindergarten and second grade assigned to the same grade level teacher. That would be helpful. Is there any information about the types of curriculum that will be provided to families who choose hybrid model to utilize on the asynchronous days? Has there been any further discussion in the timeline of an expected start to proposed models? Thank you very much for taking the time. We've been impressed by the effort put forth by our classroom teachers and all involved in this transition. We appreciate deeply the challenges faced by everyone and thankful to be part of a school community that is eager and diligent. Next tonight, from Christine Tiven, who represents the class of 2024. These comments come from several parents. We're making a decision to make the decision, we're being asked to make the decision between remote or hybrid without all information. It's not clear if the decision is for the calendar year or the whole school year. This remote learning model is not working well for all students. The Zoom meetings glitch. You mentioned that families with students in K through 8 will be part of the same cohort, but what about high school students? If families have 2 or more students in the high school, will they be in the same cohort? The students who are scheduled to return to school in November, but can this be moved up at all to October? How will schedules work? Will the kids who picked hybrid remain in the same classes? Also, if they're in class 2 days a week and remote on Wednesdays, what exactly will they do on the other 2 days? Will they be doing independent work? Also, will the kids select a remote be placed in new classes? Will classes be combined? Will CPA and honors be combined? Will they be in remote classes 5 days a week, or will they have those 2 extra days with no lectures? If students select hybrid now, what is the likelihood that we will eventually move to school full-time? From Sarah Kruger at 80 Meeting House Hill Road in Sterling. Good evening. Do all the various unions have to agree about the learning plans before they're enacted? What are the specific health metrics to return to school? What are the protocols for what happens during a COVID-19 positive case? Is there a list of symptoms and severity that will trigger a call home? What will happen when the maximum isolation capacity is reached at the nurses' stations? Will parents be provided with a flowchart for actions that will be taken? Will we be provided with information on whether in either learning plan students will retain or lose their current teachers? If the whole school and district transitions from a hybrid mode back to a remote platform, will student schedules change again, or will they look the same? Sorry, this one's just a little bunched together. How will students' learning be addressed if there's a quarantine for individual students or a pod of students or teachers due to a positive case for COVID-19 for a 10 to 14-day period? Will children just take sick days and not receive instruction even if they're asymptomatic? Will they have access to remote instruction during quarantine? Who will provide that instruction, and what will their schedule be? What is the process for families who choose the hybrid path to change the decision? What happens if a family does not complete the survey? Will they automatically be assigned? I look forward to hearing more about each learning model. Next tonight from Karen Ackerman and Michael Ackerman, from 2 Burpee Road in Sterling, who go to Thomas Prince School. Dear Dr. McCall, with all due respect and consideration of your difficult position as superintendent, while we appreciate the information given during school committee meetings, which we've watched for the entirety since March, and through the emails provided, we cannot give you a response with barely a week where the family's participation will be for the remainder of the year. Until you empower a family to make that decision, providing detailed information, we will not be responding. We need to know about what in-school learning looks like for my child, the physical space. Can we expect the child's schedule to be the same? If not, please provide with facts on what can be done, how our child's health will be protected in a safe and humane way, whether recess, necessary as supported by physicians, will be allowed, what in-school socialization looks like, the criteria for determining the specific plan of action when an in-school case of COVID-19 is identified, if our children's exposed exhibit symptoms while participating in school learning, will testing be arranged in available district, or we have to handle it on our own? As an example of specifics needed, our child's current remote-only schedule provides what amounts to be 2 days of live instruction for each class. We choose to participate in hybrid or remote only. Doesn't mean our child will have 2 full days of in-person live training for each class, as what would amount to be 1 day of remote live training? If so, that'd be a large factor for us to consider. When you can provide us with more details, then we'll provide you an answer to your question on whether or not our student will be remote or hybrid. I'm able to say that we will not be using the bus regardless. This is just one question our family is trying to answer. We don't think we can even answer that question for you by 9:25 with just 1 week of remote completed. We are trying to make this work, but it's up to you to give us the information to be successful. We also like to convey our love and appreciation to the teachers and their effort they've put forth. They've risen above every expectation and are the greatest asset of our school district in our opinion. They have our family's utmost respect, admiration, and appreciation. Next comes from Megan Marshall on Tanglewood Road in Sterling. Before I discuss the learning plan, I want to start with some positive feedback. Understanding that families have unique and different perspectives. For our family, week 1 has gone very well. Houghton and Choxet teachers and administration are hitting it out of the park. My students are engaged and focused on learning. Yes, of course, there's more screen time than I'd want, but we're in the middle of a pandemic. 6 hours of screen time per day is how we have to deliver education. I'm more than thankful. I'm not worried about their screen time. I'm worried about education. The main reason I'm writing this evening is for the lack of detail provided for the survey sent on Friday. It's impossible for any family to make an informed decision without having sufficient understanding. By way of example, before I received the plan, I never once considered choosing a fully remote model. After reviewing the plan and seeing that hybrid only involved 2 days a week of structure, I'm at a loss. It seems that remote is the only way our kids will learn more. It's important for the district to understand that a lot of families aren't choosing a plan based on the risk of contracting COVID. Many are considering what the best plan is for education. Listed below are the questions I need answered. 1, under the hybrid model on the days my children are home, will anyone from the school be checking in? I didn't see a reference to that. How will that happen? Understanding their assigned teacher will be in the classroom, what is the plan to have children engaged at home? Is the district not planning to have them watch live video? What's the reason? If there's no plan for this to happen, at least it needs to be a video check-in or exit ticket process. This can't look like the spring. We have to do better than this. When I posted on Facebook asking for feedback, I immediately received text messages and private messages for friends who selected hybrid in other schools and states with this independent learning for 2 days, and every single person told me they regretted the decision and wished their children were remote learning. Wachusett has to do better than the people from other districts. We can't allow this to happen. If a family chooses full-time remote, what will it look like and feel like at home? Will they be engaged in synchronous learning all day, or will the schedule change? Who will teach the remote children? I heard rumors in certain circumstances grade levels might be combined, where you might have grade 1 with grade 2. Is this accurate? In both the remote and hybrid models, could the children be reassigned to newer teachers? No amount of information is too much at this point. It is imperative that receive side-by-side schedules of both plans. We need to understand who is educating our children. We need to understand how much teacher-led instruction there'll be. We need the details. Families have been patient and our patience has run out. Thank you for prompt attention. From Ryan Canine on 1174 Wachusett Street in Jefferson, Massachusetts. At tonight's meeting, I'd like to see a vote take place to get students back to a physical classroom as soon as possible. Remote learning is not working for my children. They have been out of school for too long and their education is suffering. I want my kids back to school. From Anna Kozaricki. I live at 97 Joel Scott Drive in Holden. My sons attend Dawson Elementary. I'd like to begin by saying that I'm thankful for my son's teachers for going above and beyond. I've been dreading the start to school and happy to say it's going better than anticipated. With that said, one of my son's teachers is unable to access remote learning from her home and has been going to school to have kids hear her. As she works from home with her school-issued laptop, the connection's so bad that they can't understand her. This leaves everyone frustrated. This has been the case since the first day of school. No fault of hers. Each time the teacher's working from home using the equipment provided to her, she can't do her job well. As the school's preparing to transition to hybrid, what can be done to correct access issues? We've noticed that when the teacher goes into the school building, connection works. Kids can hear her. As mentioned above, I'm surprised and I think remote learning is going very well, but it's not a replacement for in-person. My family, we're all looking forward to in-person and hybrid. As some of our kids transition to hybrid and some will continue remote, connectivity issues have to be resolved. Additionally, my understanding is my kids might be assigned to different teachers. Can you clarify that for me? As well as expectations regarding what work will be done on hybrid model days. I guess I'd like more information about the 2 days at home. Thank you, from Anna. Next, from Liz and Joe Parker Gagne at 249 Chapel Street in Holden. We have significant concerns about the plans for hybrid and remote learning as they were laid out in a message on Friday. Unfortunately, communication in the plans didn't seem quite as thoughtful nor thoroughly laid out as the plan had been presented in August. If we're interpreting the plans correctly, both options would receive upheaval for our students. Sounds as though the hybrid plan includes 2 full days of asynchronous learning, which is not optimal. And the classes have been carefully crafted by teachers and administrators for their needs. Changing teachers at this point seems inadvisable. We wonder why it's not possible for classes to remain intact. If it's a budget issue, perhaps we can raise funds. Regardless, in either case, we need more specific information. And plans can and should be different at different age levels, not one size fits all. Thank you for your advocacy and dedication. Finally, tonight, we hear from Kim Arum. My daughter is a sophomore at Wachusett who has all honors in AP classes. After being on the computer for nearly 7 hours, her eyes are dry from staring at the screen and has a headache. She then has 4 hours of homework. That's almost 11 hours in front of a screen. Not socializing when she can turn away, but to have to be alert and vigilant the entire time. If we offer a full year of remote learning, will this continue to be the case? As of now, I'm not okay with this. Teachers need to realize the health and well-being of teachers, well-being of the kids, and more time in the community is detrimental not only to their social well-being, but now at their physical being as well. And I thank you all for bearing with me tonight. Those comments are thoughtful, important, and really recognize the myriad of different needs across our district. And I look forward to hearing the administration's presentation to follow.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for spending another evening here. This is, I think, meeting number 3 for me, or 4 for me this week, and I appreciate all the time that school committee members have been putting in. I also want to thank all the teachers. They have been going above and beyond over the past few days, and this is new for all of us. I love the fact that they have taken on this, with a passion, with commitment, and it's a challenge. But I think it's a challenge that everyone's ready to face. The other partner in this are the parents. Parents are the ones who are behind the scenes, helping the kids, maintain that focus and support. And I have all the respect in the world for everything that you're doing right now, and greatly appreciate just the time and effort that you're putting into helping the Wachusett kids really continue to learn. So what I have this evening for you, Chair Weeks did share questions with us, and we've done our best to try to pull many of them together in terms of responding this evening. You will, all of the questions that were posed tonight we don't have answers for everything right now. There will be more information that will be coming out over the next several days into next week. So just understand that this is part of what we're attempting to go through this evening. Again, I think many of the questions that were posed were around extending the time frame for the form to be filled out on PowerSchool, and again, that was extended into the first week of October, so October 9th. So that gives parents time to kind of go through this with a little more detail, take a look at the information that we're putting out there, talk with their building principals and teachers and so forth, just to make an informed decision. And really that's what it comes down to. I also want to thank the parents for all the emails that I received. I may not have responded to many of you because there were specific questions associated with schools and so forth. So if I did not, I apologize. And just please know that when you do send those questions in and we take them in this venue, it does make it a little easier for us to pull it all together. So with that being said, what I'd like to do is I'll present. And so again, this is our meeting where we're really hoping to answer as many questions as we can through the presentation, but we'll continue to provide more information to families as we move forward. So we're going to start off with really remote to hybrid. And, we talked about this at our one of our last meetings, and we talked about where we're going from remote to hybrid and what the different phases are. So as we kind of look through this, the timeline for our hybrid phase 1 begins on October 5th. And our plan is to have our most vulnerable students and their staff in the hybrid model beginning on October 5th. Again, we're looking to ensure that we have safe spaces for our students, and that is something that I'll talk about a little later. But it is, that's the time frame, and we've not changed that time. Phase 2 would be increased hybrid hours for those students in that population, as well as some more additional students that we would be adding to that time. And that happens a few weeks afterward on October 26th. Finally, phase 3, this was the date that we moved up. So we moved that to November 18th, which is the beginning of second quarter. And again, that's for students who opt to transition from remote to hybrid. So they're not going to stay remote. They're going to go into the hybrid model. That would begin on November 18th. So we'll talk a little bit about the different schedules associated with the various models. So we'll talk about hybrid now. Students are most likely going to be divided into cohorts based on addresses. Again, what we did in this presentation was we attempted to answer many of the questions, because many of the questions had overlapping themes. There was some redundancy, so I didn't actually put questions here, but most of what, actually all of what you're going to see this evening is in response to questions that were asked. So we're looking at dividing cohorts up by addresses, based upon where students live, and we will divvy that up in terms of the A and the B cohorts, so that we are looking to try to balance off classes if possible, half and half, as we go into this model. And again, to increase student success and really make effective use of all the relationships that have been built during the first quarter, which is something that I did hear loud and clear through many of the emails that were shared with us. We're going to do every effort to keep our students who are in their current teacher of record, with them. There could very well be a few exceptions, but what we are going to do is continue to try to also add additional support that probably be provided by other staff. So as we kind of go through this, we're looking at how we can utilize the staff that we have to further support all students and kids as we kind of, or staff as we go through this model. So the schedule, again, this is something that we had talked about several weeks ago. It's a 2-day in-person, 3-day remote for each cohort. And then Wednesdays are remote and they're synchronous for all students. So, when we're talking about a Wednesday, that would be a day when all students are remote. A and Bs would be together. And exceptions most likely occur on holidays or on weeks where there are holidays on a Monday. The remote only plan. So as we kind of look at trying to keep the consistency and success for the students together, we're trying to keep those students with their current teacher of record as much as we can. But there is still a possibility that we'll need additional support from other teachers, which we know we're going to be in that model. So teachers would continue to work with those kids in that remote setting, while at the same time, those students would also have support from their own staff who would be supporting remote-only students. They'll have synchronous online instruction with their in-person classmates, as well as asynchronous learning opportunities and instruction. And students who participate in the hybrid and remote-only plan will follow the same daily time schedules. I know there were a lot of questions about the time frames for when students will actually be in school or out of school, and so forth. There were some questions around choosing hybrid or remote. So there were questions, that really focused on choosing one and then deciding to maybe move back to another at a later date. And the only thing that we can say about that is we will allow that to happen. It's not something where we're going to say, no, if you're in this model, you can't transition out. But we just want to make sure people understand it's not going to be effective immediately. It could take a few days or even a little longer to figure out how if a student's remote and they're coming back into a hybrid model, we have to think about space in classrooms. We have to think about space on buses. The socially distancing aspects associated with our kids coming in and out of schools and in classrooms and so forth. That is it's a challenge that we're looking at, working through. But every time we add more students to a particular space, we have to think about our desks, our social distancing, how we then maintain that within a classroom that is only so big. So again, as we look at this, we just want people to know that yes, you can transition from hybrid from remote to hybrid, but it's not going to happen. If you check in on a Monday and say I'd really like my student or students back in on a Tuesday, it will be longer. It will be a longer time. So school schedules, and again, the overall hybrid model. This shows you just the in-person for cohort A on Monday, Tuesday, and then remote for cohort A on Thursday and Friday. And, again, on Wednesday, all remote teacher-directed instruction happens in the morning. And then the PM, that's when teacher training and so forth occurs. For cohort B, we have, again, Monday, Tuesday is remote, Thursday, Friday in person. I know, Bob, you want to talk a little bit about the teacher training aspects?
Yeah, what I wanted to mention, because I heard a few people ask some questions about why do we still need to do this? It's absolutely essential that we still train our staff and allow them to process with their colleagues in terms of what we're doing. Part of what the challenge is now is we're completely reinventing education here. It's not just the old bag of tricks necessarily that are going to work when you're on a computer or when you have half the kids in front of you and half the kids are remote. So one is around the process itself. We still need to train up on that, and that'll be ongoing. The other thing is, as we get additional grant funds in, we will certainly be providing more tools to our staff, and we need to be able to have opportunities to train them on those tools as we roll those out. So that's why we need this Wednesday afternoon time, and we need it throughout the year.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. And again, we did have some questions about that specifically, from parents, and we want to ensure that we give our staff enough time to reimagine education. We were talking about that today with our administrative team, but it's really reimagining how we do this. So this is a sample of what an elementary schedule would look like for the hybrid model. So and again, it's a sample. These aren't times that are connected to any specific school because those are all unique. All schools, most of the schools do not have the same exact starting time and ending times, but they're pretty darn close. So 9 to 9:15, it would be a morning meeting, and during that time, you would have both the in-person, the A group, and you'd have the remote students there for morning meeting. It would be a time for the teacher to talk about what they're going to be doing for the day. At some schools, they do responsive classroom. Other schools, they do a share time at the elementary level. So that would be a time to have the group together in the same way that they are going to be on Wednesday mornings. 9:15 to 10:45, we need a pretty large block of time for our elementary students to have ELA. And the first 15 minutes would be dedicated to a mini lesson for both the in-person and remote students. And what would happen is the teacher would then work with in-person students for the rest of the time. The remote students would work asynchronously on assignments that accompany the mini lesson, other activities that go along with it, or even Lexia, which is a reading support program that we purchased this year for all of our K-4 students. So that is going to be on the side for those people, or for the students who are doing remote. There would be a break, so you're going to have an in-person break where, and by break, that's really a mass break that would be going on. And there could be a math mini lesson that happens for the remote students at that time, where the teacher starts to go through some of the math things that he or she wants those remote students to work on during the next block, which is 11 to 12. And that's where you have the in-person doing a math mini lesson and practice, and then remote practice during that time. And teachers can then come back and take a look at where those other students are. An afternoon schedule for that same class might have, a lunch from 12 to 12:30. 12:30 to 1:15 would be the opportunity for a special, which could be art, music, or PE. There's another mass break that would be put in there. And again, next to that, in person, science or mini history lesson would be for remote. So those students who are learning remotely might not take that break at the same time, because the teacher could then say, okay, you know what, we're actually going to go do a little mini lesson on this. And what we're doing is we're looking at how we can also have some of our support staff who are currently in our building help, assist with items such as mass breaks, bathroom breaks, and so forth, especially at the elementary level, where we know much of what's going to happen during the day is just going to be extended because of the time associated with bringing kids into the building, having the social distancing, making sure they're they're cleaning their hands before they're going into classrooms, after they're using the restrooms and so forth. So there is definitely a time associated with all of these different activities that will occur in a very different way than they have in the past. And then there would be basically 2 afternoon blocks that would be associated with science or history. And, again, that's going to be a little bit of practice for remote in terms of what they would be doing in around direct teaching with the teacher around mini lessons, and then also support from other staff members. And then an afternoon block would be the same type of thing, where it's a review of math, ELA, SEL, or more time for more in-person and also remote learning on top of that.
Daryl, if I could just add, if you could go back one slide, thank you. I wanted people to understand that this is an example of a single sample schedule from an elementary school. Things like a special art, music, phys ed, that could happen at any point during the day. So maybe your son or daughter would start their day with art, music, or phys ed, because that will sort of march through each time period throughout the whole day. That's essentially something where those people have their own schedule, and that provides our teachers with their prep period. So that could happen at any time. This is just a sample of what that schedule could be like. The other thing I just wanted to mention is there were some questions about when specifically will that the school run. What we'll be doing is when we get to November 18th, we'll be reverting, for the most part, back to the original schedule times, the start and the end of the day that we had in place before any of this COVID happened. So that'll be both if you're coming into school and being part of the hybrid model, or whether you're choosing to be fully remote. Your schedule will start and stop based on those old times. That's what we're going to revert back to.
Great, thank you, Bob. This next slide is a middle grade sample slide. So what you might see in a middle school, and what you'll note is that this is a schedule that's basically 7 periods a day, where there's a homeroom, and also there are times in here, even though they don't show what the actual the courses are that are in here. There are also, you'll have built in out of these 7 periods related art, history, foreign language, science, social studies, ELA. So those are all part of these particular models. What you'll note is that with this particular model, there is the opportunity for students to participate both remotely and in person during these different classes. And as we look at this at the middle school level and ultimately at the high school level, we want to ensure that what we're doing is we're allowing these groups of students, and we heard this loud and clear from many parents, and I've also heard this from teachers. You've developed this core group of students, and keeping them together is really important in that sense. So we're looking to do that as we move forward with both remote and hybrid, working together.
Daryl, one thing I wanted to point out to everybody that's looking at this, this is once again just a sample schedule. Some of our middle schools do not have 7-period days. Some have less than that. So the schedule you might see might not have all these periods. It might have one less. But the point here is the periods rotate through the day. The start and the end times would be the same, whether you're coming in for a hybrid, whether you're remote on those days, or whether you're fully remote. The schedule would be the same for everybody.
Great, thank you, Bob. And again, I can tell you this is a 7-day rotation. So for the high school, we have spent a great deal of time working with high school administration, over the past, several weeks. And as we've looked at the spaces in the high school and the sheer volume of students that we have in the building, we've really found that there are some issues associated with items such as lunch. In order for us to have enough space and provide lunch to basically half of the high school, let's just say it's 900 students, or close to 1,000, Principal Bienda would have to run at least 6 lunches to get them through the day, which just doesn't physically work in terms of the amount of space and time that it would take out of a schedule. So there have been some other high schools that have been that actually have a model whereby they have morning blocks that are associated with a typical day. Students dismiss, or midway through the day, they have a grab and go lunch, and they get on the bus and they go home, and then they pick up their last 2 periods of the day online. We're looking to move into this model in order to basically allow for there to be enough time for all of these periods during the day, while at the same time also not trying to compress a lunch period and look for places all over the high school to have students eat lunch. I think the way it works, and Bob, you can correct me, we can basically fit about 110, 115 students in the cafeteria at one time right now, because of the social distancing requirements and at least the 6 feet. So if you were to go into our high school right now, we do have it set up as a caf with desks, and they're all facing the same way. And I can tell you that it would take at least 6 lunch periods to get those students through that, which just it really doesn't conform to a high school sample or schedule. So when we're looking at this as well, you'd have your hybrid and your remote students working together in those courses as they go through this. As we look at the remote students who are in need of either more support and so forth, we are looking at how we can utilize some of our other staff who may be immunocompromised, may not be working directly in school, and having those support staff people there to help either support the classroom teacher or the student, small groups and so forth. So that's the other aspect of what we're going to be doing with those remote learners. One of the items that we've talked about in the past has also been busing. And we know that busing, and this is an example of what a bus would look like in terms of space, the actual seating assignments for students that would be on a bus. The assignments don't change based upon age level. You can basically fit the same number. You can fit the same number of high school students as you can early elementary students. So you have a K-1-2 building in Naquag, and I know Glenwood and Naquag have combined bus routes, but you're still going to only be able to have a certain number of students on each bus, basically in the low 20s. When we're looking at what we're kind of moving forward with, we still have to think about a number of seats that we might have to reserve. There were questions, and these are questions that I've answered before with parents, but there are questions about, hey, listen, I'm in a situation where all of a sudden my child's going to need a bus. We want to be able to attempt to accommodate that as best we can. That's an important part of what we do as a regional district. It's provide that transportation. So we want to ensure that we have the ability to do that. There were a lot of questions about busing that we've been fielding. Students are socially distanced and they have to wear a mask on the bus no matter what. So that's from our kindergarten students all the way through our high school students. Students are going to have assigned seats on the bus. They are to go to that seat, and that's where they stay. Students from the same household, they can definitely sit together. That's something that is permitted. And then, one of the issues that we're really looking at is, in the past, we've been able to accommodate families that have other daycare places where students go. So they might get picked up at home, but then they're dropped off at a daycare center or at another place, another home. And one of the things that we have to take into consideration is our capacity restrictions and the contact tracing requirements. So this year we really have to focus on only picking up and dropping off students at their home stops. It's vital that we do that. We literally we won't have enough busing to accommodate that model until the governor relaxes the requirements around bus seating and the number of students who are able to be on a bus. We are kind of stuck in this situation. And then again, one other item at the bus stop, the social distancing and masks still need to be worn there. So lunches, there were questions about lunch. Lunches are going to be held in cafeterias. The cafeterias are set up. Most cafeterias have desks rather than the traditional cafeteria tables where you have usually you have 12 students who can sit on a long rectangular table. We can't utilize those. We're not able to fit enough students with those in a cafeteria. So those have all been moved out of cafeterias for the most part. And we have classroom desks that will now be used all facing the same way, spaced at least 6 feet apart. And students will be allowed to take their masks off when they eat. They'll be able to talk. It is a time when they're socially distanced enough. But again, if they need to get up and do something, they're going to have to put their mask on, go use the restroom, whatever that might be. All of the other restraints that are there are still going to be followed. And again, they're going to have assigned lunch seats at some grade levels so that we know that that's the place where they're seated and they're supposed to be. There have been questions about health metrics. We are, as a community, this is a model, and they've changed this now. It's red, yellow, green, and now gray. So this particular picture from DESE is a little older, so it's now an updated version, and it should be gray. But we've now had 2 weeks with all gray communities. 2 weeks ago, we had Holden was in a yellow zone. So they had, basically cases of, between 4 and 8 per 100,000 students or 100,000 people. And that's where we fall into that hybrid remote. We've not been in that model for several days or for a couple weeks now. And, again, we're looking at that very closely. When we're looking at, really reopening and getting the kids back into the building, we're looking at the initial fall reopening guidelines that DESE had put out, the DESE open close metrics, which is basically what I just showed you. public health guidelines and directives that are out there. And then also, where we are within the 5 towns in terms of COVID cases, and also surrounding communities and their health data. We do have one community that is a red community that abuts two of our towns, and we still have to think about that. That is one thing that I have had parents call me about and just say, "Hey, listen, I know I work in that community, so there is this possibility for transmission. There's always possibility for transmission in one way or the other." But we are right next to a large community that has, that it is in the red.
Carol, do you think you could update the parents maybe on what's changed since this all started with you and the meetings that you're having with local boards of health and those types of things?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I didn't put that in the slide part. So I've had the opportunity to meet with our local boards of health now several times over the past, let's say, 8 weeks. We are, looking carefully at all the metrics and the data that are coming in from the state. Again, the boards of health are the ones who are notified when there's a COVID case in place in a community. So they've been fantastic at, when we get together and we talk through this, and they continue to help support us and look at how we can possibly get students back into school in a very safe manner. They have been instrumental in listening to me talk about what some of the metrics are from DESE, and what they think about those. Again, much of what we'll talk about, and this is a larger comment or question that has come up. If we have one school that is kind of in, there's a COVID break out in a school, for example, will that school close for 2 weeks in order to have the students quarantine? And will the other schools be open? I do know that DESE has permitted that, where within a district, a school can close. Those students would work remotely during that time, as would the staff. And the other schools would continue to work if it's a hybrid model. So it is something that we're looking at. And I know the boards of health have been very supportive of any kind of work that we're doing. We also have our nurses and Director Keenan. They've been involved in our meetings, and have it's great because there's been a great deal of communication, and I'm feeling very good about opening up schools and getting the staff and students into safe buildings. And again, this kind of goes along with what I just talked about. We've been working with our teachers union around ensuring that there are, our HVAC systems are working properly. We have our own HVAC person on staff in this district. We're lucky in that sense because we have 13 buildings. That person is pretty much straight out every day, no matter what. But he has been assessing every single Univent HVAC system in the entire school district. And we have, Bob's been instrumental in kind of helping to organize how this all gets rolled out in terms of support for the different schools, some of the upgrades we're making. I have been keeping the school committee and building and finance, facilities and security updated on all the building updates associated with our facilities and what we are doing to help and just mitigate any issues that might be happening, and really help support what we can do to keep things moving in a positive direction. So this includes having a group from Woburn ATC group come in and check out our air handling systems throughout our schools. So basically what they are going to do is they're going to hit up 100 different spaces throughout the district and take a look at the HVAC systems and, assess, The air movement, so we're, the air exchange rate per hour, looking at CO2 levels and so forth. Those are all items that really need to be taken into account when we're talking about, ensuring that buildings are safe for students and staff. This is going to begin this week, and there will be a pretty lengthy, thorough report that will be shared with us in approximately 3 weeks. And when we find, when we're ultimately the results are shared with us, we will ensure that any modifications or corrections associated with any of the systems will be corrected, immediately. There were questions about mask protocols. A lot of families are concerned about that. All staff will be wearing masks in the buildings. If a teacher is in his or her classroom right now, we do have, gosh, in many schools, almost all the staff are already in school, working from their classrooms. And what we're looking at there is, if they're in the classroom and they're far away from, there's no one else there, they can definitely take their mask off. But as soon as someone comes into the room and we start to look at the social distancing, we're asking staff to keep their masks on. If they leave their room, go to the restroom, go to the office, whatever, they all have to wear masks. We're going to do the same with all of our students, grades 2 through 12 plus, as well. And then also our pre-K and grade 1 students, we're highly encouraging families to help them get used to wearing masks, because we would really like them to wear masks, at that level as well. So we're, as I mentioned earlier in the, when we reviewed the schedules, we're going to have mask breaks during the day. So those mask breaks will take place. Many of the classrooms, the social distancing, we might not be able to actually have a 6-foot distance between desk and desk. So there is the possibility that it's less than that. If that is the case, they will not be allowed to take their masks off at their desks. They will go maybe out into a pod. If it's like a school like Glenwood, you have the large pods and the different wings. They could go out there and socially distance. They could go outside and do the same thing. But we are going to incorporate those into the day. As again, we've been wearing masks for a long time, now at central office and so forth. And it's when if you have the opportunity to take a break, I think students will definitely want that. Special education. I know Christine Smith wanted to talk about a few different things. And Chris, do you want to go through this?
Yeah, thanks, Daryl. Thanks so much. So our first slide informs everybody that we have had a few CPAC general meetings, public meetings, one on August the 13th, another one in September. That is, they're both posted on our on the website. And our next CPAC meeting will be on October the 5th. It will be a time for elections, and then it will be a time where special education parents, other parents can ask any questions, and I'll be there to address them to the best of my ability. They have been very helpful and informative. There were some questions tonight about IEP services. I want to remind everybody that each family should have already received the Parent Engagement Special Education Learning Plan. And within that plan, your students' services should be described, and it should be described for the remote learning model, because that's the model we're in right now. That document is a fluid document, and we should expect that that document would change as we change from remote to hybrid, but also as we understand where our students are in this particular time or what they need. All of the services that are on a student's IEP are expected to be provided to the fullest extent, irregardless of the model that we're in. However, how those services are provided, again, may be changing, and that's what we would be using the parent engagement form for, so that we can communicate clearly all of those changes. There was a question tonight also about, in reference to inclusion and pull-out services. Again, all of our IEP services are to be implemented to the fullest extent. So Right now, we have special education teachers and paraprofessionals attending gen ed sections of instruction and also still conducting some pull-out sections. Families have access to those links, or our special ed teachers or paraprofessionals are joined into the Seesaw platform or the Google Classroom as co-teachers in some of those settings. Our related service providers are also doing that. Again, I just want to remind us that our focus in special education is to provide services that are identified in the IEP to the fullest extent, which includes rigorous in-person sessions, remote participation in live classes, and we are still using minimal asynchronous services as appropriate. As you make the decision of choosing between hybrid or remote, I think it's important to consider that whatever plan you choose as a family is how we are supposed to then provide special education services. However, I want to assure our families that we would like to have individual conversations and engagements with our families so that we can ensure the best plan for your family. So if you're in a situation where you need to do remote only services, that we tailor that program to ensure that the special ed services are also a part of that. And they may be an opportunity for a student to be in person, or they may actually be remote. But we want to make sure that we're having those individual plans drawn up at an individual level for all 1,200 students that special education services. So please be patient with us as we do that, but partner with us to engage in those conversations. It's very important.
And Chris, could I ask you, because I know one of the parents did ask about this,
Thanks,
is it
Bob.
a possibility as we go through the cohort A and cohort B that there might be some students that might be in for more than 2 days a week?
Yeah, definitely. We may need to have students in. Some of our highest need students may be in for 5 days a week. Some of our special education students may be in for 4 days. We may have students that are in person and getting in-person services for special ed, and then on the days when they're home, they may get remote services. So yeah, it is. There's all kinds of plans happening, and it should be very individualized to what the student needs, the student's developmental level, and what the family can partner with us in doing. In a lot of cases, there's a high need for that partnering. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Daryl.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate that. And thank you to your administrative staff and all the teachers who have been, working tirelessly to put everything together. So attestation, attendance, and illness, these are all items that we had some questions about. So, we continue to be, concerned about the safety and the health and wellness of students. So it is the expectation of the district that parents will be conducting a daily check for any symptoms of COVID, and they're going to keep their students home if the student has any symptoms whatsoever. If a student who's home, this was another one of the questions, because of illness, might they be able to participate from home remotely if they were able to do so? I think that could definitely be the case if they're able to do so, and it will work out with the course in which they're taking, and it wouldn't be considered a missed school day. So, and also all the details associated with this are all within the reopening guidelines and protocols. That was shared with all staff. It is on the WRSD website, posted on the front page, and it's a pretty lengthy document, but it does give quite a bit of detail in terms of the processes that will take place associated with, anything associated with the COVID responses. So school nurses, we're very lucky in this district that we have a school nurse in every single building, and at the high school we have 2. There are many districts, and I was surprised to hear this, in Massachusetts that don't have a full-time nurse. So as a community, I feel like we're in a very good place there. So there were some questions about the school nurse being able to do, and they're all female, so her job with students here while also dealing with our COVID, our cases of suspected COVID, having students go into isolation room where students would be placed until their family member could come pick them up. Again, much of what the questions really involved were, how is a person going to be able to go through the donning and doffing associated with PPE and do all of her other responsibilities associated with being the nurse of a building with, 200 kids. Again, one of the items that we have to remember is when we go into hybrid, only half the students are going to be in the building. So that's going to bring a lot of that stuff down in terms of the number of kids who go down to the nurse because they're not feeling well, they have a stomach ache, those types of things. The elementary level, especially that occurs. So, we're definitely keeping an eye on this. We are going to have more support staff get trained around the processes of donning and doffing PPE properly, so that when we are in a position where we have students that we suspect have COVID and they are in one of the COVID isolation rooms, we will make sure that we have somebody there to monitor them prior to them being picked up. Every school has one of these spaces that is separate from the nurse's office, so that we do, and it's basically a place where we have the opportunity for that student to be able to be isolated. If there are multiple students, 2, 3, 4, we have the capacity to do that where as long as they're social distance, they're wearing, we actually have them wear N95 masks at the time. And we have air purifiers, room purifiers that will be in all of those spaces as well. But again, we'll have more information in the reopening guidelines associated with any nursing details. And the nurses.
Daryl, I think that.
Go ahead, Chris.
Sorry, I think that you're super tired because I know that we've stopped calling that the medical isolation room and just calling it the medical waiting room so that we're not freaking anyone out. I know you're tired because we haven't called it that since, I don't know, June or something.
You're exactly right. You're exactly
sorry,
right.
I wanted to just send that out to everybody, but it's been a long couple of weeks, let me tell you. So I just wanted to share that with everybody.
So, so again, medical waiting room will be the space where those students will be, if there's a suspected COVID case. COVID-19 testing, there were some questions about this. At this time, there is no state mandate around having schools test, but I can tell you that since the past few weeks, since we last went through a presentation, DESE has put together a remote testing team that will get deployed to a school if there is a suspected outbreak. We have actually a special phone number that we call. So the superintendent central office gets notified by a school if there is a suspected case, and DESE wants us to call them anytime there is a suspected case of COVID. We have some questions about extracurricular activities, and if you're remote, could you still participate in an extracurricular activity in person? And that's a definite yes. You could definitely do that. Again, if you're remote, you're still part of the school. You're still part of what's going on. And if it's a matter of you getting into school to do an after-school activity, a club, an athletic activity, that is definitely allowed. And again, if it's a remote activity, that's not an issue. There will be clubs meeting remotely over the next several weeks. Some have already started, and any extracurricular one associated with in-person, you're good if you're hybrid or remote. So I just wanted to take this time to thank all the students and the teachers, staff, parents, just for everything that you've done over the past, for teaching staff, for families over the past, not just the past few days, but I know this has been something that has been, we've been working on since March. We've been dealing with since March, and I hear there's angst on both sides of the table in terms of people being concerned about the safety associated with bringing staff and kids back into schools, and then the angst associated with families saying, I really want my child back in school because I feel as though they'll be in a much better place in terms of their social emotional support that can be there, being with friends, being there with a classroom teacher, learning in person. So, we're trying to meet as many needs as possible, but please understand as we go through this process and we continue to answer these questions and put more details out there, we'll be sure to make sure that information gets out there. One of the items that we will also be doing, every school is going to have its own specific plan. So all of those plans will have details associated with your particular school. If you're, talking about Naquag or Glenwood or Central Tree and Rutland, each one of those schools, they'll have common themes associated with maybe entry and exiting the building, use of restrooms, hallway etiquette, those types of things. All of that information will be in one place for you, so you'll be able to kind of go through that and get a better idea of what's going on. Again, we can give a 40,000-foot overview of some of the details, but we can really get down to ground level with the schools. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. McCollum. Just for a quick clarification before we do adjourn tonight, will that specific information from schools be provided previous to that October deadline?
Yes, so that'll go out next week. So all of that information, we're actually been, we met with principals today. We're meeting again with principals tomorrow morning, and that information will be out there for the public probably by Wednesday or Thursday of next week.
Okay. And I do want to remind committee members that we do meet again next Tuesday, not next Monday at 7 p.m. If you've garnered, obviously, more questions based on the feedback you've received tonight, we'll have an opportunity to ask those questions then. I want to also thank so many of you for having your camera on tonight. I'm sorry for those who don't have good connectivity. I guess I'm blessed now in Princeton to finally have good internet, right, Bob? This would not be the case 2 years ago for us. So again, thank you all for your patience tonight. Thank you for listening carefully to the concerns of our parents. And thank you also for listening very carefully to the administration. Again, we're doing this as a team. I'm sorry if members of the public didn't have all their specific questions answered. We're doing our best to get those questions answered. And finally, Dr. McCall, I think you mentioned via email there'd be an FAQ. When could the public expect that to be submitted?
So again, that's another document that we're working on, and we're trying to base it off of the questions that were posed, and we're trying to consolidate some of them so it's a little easier and a little more general, so that it's not school specific or grades. It could be grade specific, but not school specific. So that will go out probably later next week. Great,
thank you. So everybody can be, Malia, yes, I did get through all the public comment. Excuse me, now I'm getting tired. So again, we'll be meeting next Tuesday to get more information. For the public, you'll be receiving information from your school specific and then also an FAQ through the district website. With that being said, I need a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. I threw my cheat sheet away from me for once tonight. I haven't had a call on you tonight. So we'll start with Member Amos.
Yes.
Member Ayala.
Yes.
Member Bennett.
Yes.
Member Brown.
Brown, yes.
Member Dennis.
Yes.
Member Gustafson.
Yes.
Member Haber.
Yes.
Member Haynes. Oh, I'm sorry. Member Everett. Bob.
Who?
You-
Oh, yes.
Is that
Get
it?
a little scrambled. Yeah. I guess the Princeton internet's not that good.
Hey, don't knock. All right, I'll take that as a yes, Member Ender. Member Kirschenbaum.
Kirschbaum, yes.
Member Lavoy.
He left the meeting.
Okay. Member Longbalea. You with us?
Linda's not at the meeting.
I finally get you guys all like on tile at once. That's the real Brady Bunch finally. Member Mills,
Mills, no.
Member Mitchell,
Mitchell, yes.
Member Otmar,
Otmar, yes.
Member Shapiro,
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva,
Silva, yes. I'm just curious why Member Mills voted no. Did I miss something?
he just voted. Member Smith,
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson,
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland,
Woodland, no.
Member Young.
Young, yes.
And the chair votes yes. I'll see you guys on Tuesday evening. Thank you very much.